you as well. I think we're cool. Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished guests, and our most honored guests of all. And who are they? They're the veterans who have served so proudly to make this country great. You are our most honored guests today. My name happens to be Ron Brown, and I am a fellow Vietnam veteran. And I served proudly with you in that conflict. And the reason I'm here today is because Alan Clark came to me about a month ago and said, would you help me on a Vietnam Day celebration program? And I said, yes. The next thing Alan handed me was a piece of paper, and I read I was the master of ceremony. So if Alan asked you to participate, be very careful when you volunteer. On behalf of the VA North Texas Healthcare System, I greet you in a special welcome home Vietnam Veterans Program. As you know, April 30th will signal the 30th anniversary of the evacuation of Saigon, signaling in some way an end to our war in Southeast Asia. For many of us, that war still continues today, as I look and see. This 30th anniversary is a fitting time for us to get together to commemorate our dedicated service together in the 1960s and 1970s. We will begin our commemoration today by posting the colors that will be performed by members of Chapter 31 U.S. Army Special Forces Association in Dallas. If you are able, please stand at this moment and remain standing through the invocation. Present the colors. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by three members of our local veterans family. I would like to ask them to come forward to lead it. One is Joe Moss, who was wounded May 13th, 1969 in the Delta, assigned to the 4th Battalion, 47th Regiment, the 9th Infantry Division. Ron LaBarre served 2 years in Vietnam and was awarded wounded as an Army Staff Sergeant in G Company, 75th Infantry of the 198th during 1969 and 1970. Patricia Wolford was a combat nurse in the 2nd Surgical Hospital at On-K, 1st Cavalry Division Base Camp, 1965 and 1966. She now serves as Chief of Clinical Quality Management Service here at the VA North Texas Healthcare System. Our National Anthem will be led by Cliff Henry. Cliff is currently Assistant Chief of Medical Administration Service here at North Texas. Cliff served as a field artillery duty in the Army from 1977 to October 2000, including assignments in Germany and Korea.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the rampart we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave through the night that that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
It's wonderful to hear our national anthem when it's sung from the heart, isn't it? Post scholars. Our invocation today will be presented by Ann Hurd. Ann is currently the president of the National Gold Star Mothers. Her son Ronald Hurd was killed as a member of the Americal Division August 5th, 1970.
Bow your head and pray with me. Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for the blessings of life within itself. Thank you for our veterans and their willingness to risk all, so our nation might dwell in peace and freedom. May they find the honor and recognition they truly deserve. Father, in the name of your divine Son, I pray your mighty healing power will fall on this assembly of returned warriors in cause of peace and freedom. Wherever they need healing, body, soul, or spirit, please bestow it upon them. Give them understanding, freedom of pain. Bring comfort to their veterans. Bring comfort to those veterans who grieve their comrades. Console our families who will always grieve their losses. Thank you for all the great men and women who have served and are still serving in the cause of our nation. Bless you. God bless America. Amen. And God bless the Vietnam veterans. We love you.
Be seated, please. And we'd certainly like to thank you. All of us share your grief. I was standing here as she was praying to someone who also lost a son on this earth. And we certainly know your sacrifice, feel your grief and sorrow, both for you as well as others, and all the mothers who have given their sons and daughters for our country. This time I would like to recognize the leadership of the VA North Texas healthcare system. I would like them to stand as their names called, and please hold, and we will recognize them later. Betty Bolin Brown is the acting director. Dan Hears is the acting associate director. Eric Jacobson is the acting assistant director. Dr. John Sumping is the acting chief of staff. And Dr. Gail Bentley is the acting chief of staff for education. We salute you and thank you very much for hosting us today. We also have some very distinguished guests in our audience today. I would also ask them to stand as their name is called, and we'll recognize them later as a group. First is, not last, but first is Colonel Ken Cordier of the United States Air Force, retired. Is a member of the Community Council here at the Dallas VA. Ken was a POW in North Vietnam for over 6 years. Ken, would you remain standing, please? Jesse Nall, let me do it. Let me recognize them all, then we'll recognize them with our applause. Jesse Nall was awarded the Navy Cross in action as the leader of the division of torpedo bombers against an enemy Japanese task force off Kyushu, Japan in April 1945, which sunk a Japanese destroyer. Jesse, where are you today? Wonderful to have you. Dick Agnew is commander of the North Texas chapter of the Legion of Valor and recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross during the Korean War. He's also a member of the VA's North Texas Community Council and advisory chairman for fundraising for one of the best causes in the world we have today, and that's the Dallas VA Fisher House Project, which I hope many of you will be hearing about and will be able to support. Dick. Judge Burkett is a Vietnam veteran of the 199th Light Infantry Brigade. He is co-author with Glenna Whitley of the McCain book called Stolen Valor. If you haven't got it, Judd is over here today that will not only sell it, but autograph it for you. He has been honored in numerous ways for this publication. It exposes people like our own beloved Dan Rather and the phonies that also claim to have been in the Vietnam War as heroes and were not. And you might be shocked and surprised at some of those who make the claims and they've stolen the valor from you who actually did do the service there. Judge, we certainly welcome you here today. Jerome Foss and Eva Curl from the Senate Office of General John Cornyn is here today. We certainly welcome you. Darnell Green, the Dallas Veterans Service Officer and a member of the North Texas VA Community Council here in the Dallas area. Finally, Brigadier General Bill Roll, U.S. Army retired. Bill was with the 1st of the 12th Cav, 1st Cavalry Division, Vietnam, from 1965 to 1966. It's our pleasure to have you here today as our distinguished guest. Thank you very much for coming. We thought it would be very appropriate if we would introduce the next 4 guests and have each one of them sort of give a little quick talk, and I'm the one who's got the clock on them, by the way, so it won't be a long one. I assure you of that. And representing the 4 services of our country's armed forces. The first is Colonel Dean Descartes, United States Air Force, retired. He's the immediate past National Commander of the Legion of Valor of the United States of America. He was awarded the Air Force Cross for his action at Lucia Pass, March 21st, 1970. Dean, will let you start kicking off.
Welcome, veterans. Welcome home. When Alan asked me if I could do this for you all, I had to sit down and do a little thinking, and I thought, that war was a long time ago, and we're still kind of fighting it, but we tend to overlook some of the things that happened. I want to run through a little chronology for you. The war actually started for us on August 2nd, 1964, with the enemy's attack on the USS Maddox. 2 days later, on August 4th, we did our first air attacks over North Vietnam. On August 7th of 1964, the Congress approved the Conquer Resolution allowing the unlimited use of force on North Vietnam. March 2nd of 1965, we began our first bombing campaign, Rolling Thunder. It was scheduled to last for 8 weeks, and it ran on for 3 years. May 11th, 1969, I entered the war as a Sky Raider pilot with the 6th Special Operations Squadron flying from Da Nang. In the next year, I flew 265 missions, logging 560 combat hours. In November of '69, my squadron was deactivated. I was reassigned to a unit called Operating Location Alpha Alpha 56 Special Operations Wing, and I was flying out of Da Nang. The unit was assigned 10 aircraft and 12 pilots, and we literally had 10 airplanes ready every morning, including patches over the holes. We seldom had less than our 10. The 28 assigned technicians in the base shops did a magnificent job in maintaining and servicing our aircraft. I never had to board an aircraft for maintenance problems. We were never short of munitions, fuel, or spare parts. On April 25th, 1970, I flew my last mission. It wasn't scheduled that way, but they shot me down and I was injured. This was at a place called Dak Siang. Special Forces camp was under attack. We had been out on some other business and had a full load of ordnance. We asked if we could help, and they said yes. Well, I didn't give them much help. I rolled in on my first pass with immediately hit, thud, boom, the tail wheel fell down. I headed for the hills, looked down, it's on fire. I parachuted out. I landed in a tree about 3 feet off the ground, unbuckled, sat down. Didn't smoke a cigarette, but I thought about it. Waited a couple hours. Finally, they rustled up an Army dust-off helicopter. That was the medevac for those people who might not know. And he happened to have a penetrator and a hoist. They could see my parachute hanging in the tree, so they knew where I was. He flew over. He dropped the penetrator on the ground. I got on it, strapped myself on tightly, jerked on the cable like we'd all been told to do. Didn't do anything. So I got out took off my mask, got out my radio, called my wingman and said, "Tell that guy I'm on his penetrator and I'm not getting off." I was expecting him to just hoist me up through the trees, but no, he decided he'd like to fly, so he started moving. He drug me through the trees. The big vine got between my head and the penetrator, and I was fighting to get it over the top of my head. I finally got it off. I looked up, and there's a limb about 6 inches in diameter, slammed me upside the head. I saw stars, but I didn't pass out. Finally broke free of the jungle, at least I did. And I could see all these sparkling lights around. And I thought, damn, if I shoot my cable and I don't have another parachute. They weren't shooting me, they were shooting that helicopter. Didn't make a mistake that time. And then the guy decided we needed to turn, so I'm hanging on the end of a 150-foot cable, and he swings that thing around tightly, and I go flying out like I was in a carnival ride. He hauled me for 4 or 5 miles on the end of that cable, and finally drug me up on board, dropped me off at the Special Forces camp at Dak To, where I got another helicopter that took me to Lake Two, and Charlie Greens finally recovered me back to Penang. They threw me in the hospital and said, "You're on your last mission." On May 12th of 1970 was a very significant date. I was home in Dallas with my family. But war continued for our forces until January 21st of 1972. And as I told you before, on April 29th, 1975, the U.S. Embassy in Saigon disbanded. I was awarded several decorations for my service. I wear those medals with pride, but they do not belong to me. They belong to the long list of men and women who supported me in my actions against their enemies. Like all you veterans, I am proud of my service. I know you are proud of yours. We are all proud Americans. I thank you for your attention. God bless you one and all, and God bless America.
Thank you very much, Dean. Our second speaker representing the Navy is Michael Thornton. Michael was a Navy SEAL, the Navy Advisory Group, and received the Medal of Honor for his actions the Cuivet River in South Vietnam in 1972. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to salute a Medal of Honor recipient. Michael.
Thank you so very much. It's my honor to be here. I really appreciate Alan giving me a call because I tell you, my fellow veterans out there, you're what it's all about, what this country's all about, what you've stood for all your life. I had 4 tours to Vietnam with SEAL Team. My first tour was in 1968, and I came back from my 4th tour on January 13th, 1973, which is my father's birthday, which is my life. But this is about Mike Thornton, the Medal of Honor is not what this is about. What this is about is each one of you sitting out there and every other veteran from Vietnam that we're so each and every one of us are so proud of. You know, everybody said we had a rough deal. Well, we did, but I don't think so. Because when you look around Washington, D.C. and what's happening after Vietnam, we were the first one to get our major memorial there. We were the first one to get the Three Soldiers Monument there. We got our nursing there. Because everybody counted. In Vietnam, we thought we were forgotten, but we weren't forgotten. You know, a very close friend of mine is a guy by the name of Admiral Jim Stockdale. And Jimmy's very ill right now, and he was a POW for 7.5 years. And Admiral Stockdale is very close to me in my heart. But him and I had some long conversations about what he went through and what I went through. It's not about us, it's about each and every one of you, what you have to go through every day of your life and how you live your life. But what I found out about my life, we all have bad memories, but God only had some great memories too. You know, and we have to deal with these memories. I can't deal with your memories just as you can't deal with my memories. But I want each and every one of you to be so proud of what you've done in the support of this great country of America. I want you to hold your heads up high, because, ladies and gentlemen, what you did when you went to Vietnam was to stop communism. And if you'd have told me in 1973 that the Berlin Wall would fall down in the 1980s, I'd tell you you're crazy as hell. But it's what each and every one of you young men and women out there, at that time we were young, it's what you did in your loyalty and your honor to your God, your country, and your family, what you stood for. And that's the reason why we are a free nation today, because of each and every one of you. So God bless you. God bless America. And as the Colonel was saying, this medal that myself and this great friend of mine, James Stone, wears around our neck, this medal does not belong to us. This medal belongs to each and every one of you for serving your country. You know, the great thing about all of us, we might feel sorry for ourselves sometimes, but we were able to come home. Some of us lost limbs, some of us didn't. But you know, the great thing, we're able to look at our children. We can put our arms around, we can get a hug. There's so many great men and women who have that honor to come back here. So let's think about them this great day. And not just this great day, every day of our life. Because every day of Mike Thorne's life is Memorial Day. Because as long as I live, as long as my children live, as long as my grandchildren live, I will never let them forget about Vietnam and what each and every you veterans did after. God bless you, and God bless America.
Our next speaker, representing the United States Marine Corps, is Lieutenant General Richard Carey. He's a retired Brigadier General. He was in charge, as a Brigadier General, he was in charge of the 9th Marine Amphibious Brigade that conducted the evacuation of Saigon. He also served in Korea at the Chosin River Bore, good old Crows and Chosin, and had 2 tours in Vietnam. General Carey, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, it's an honor to be able to speak to each and every one of you, believe me. As a Marine, I'm very proud of what the Marines did. I'm very proud of all the services. I did serve 3 tours in Vietnam. First time, I'm a Philo, first in and last out. As a Marine, I am. The Marines were first connected with Vietnam in the formation of the Vietnamese Marine Corps in 1954. Colonel John Croiseau was the first Marine in Vietnam. And I had the dubious honor of being the last Marine officer out of Vietnam during the evacuation, which I headed in 1975. The Marines, and I'd like to speak to each and every one of them as a Marine, and I like to speak to them as a group of tough guys. And I'd like to just make it a little lighter at this time to tell you a little story about a Marine that went into the Marine recruiting station. And you've heard about the difference between the Army and the Navy and the Marine Corps, and they all have their pride and they all have their mottos. And the Marines' motto is, "Are you tough enough?" And this one young Marine went into the recruiter, and he said, "I'd like to enlist in the Marine Corps." And the gunny sitting behind his desk said, "You're not tough enough, son. Go home and grow up and get tough." And he says, "What do you mean I'm not tough enough? Let me give you an example of just how tough I am." He said, I'm from Nebraska. I'm a farm boy. And I was out doing combine one day in the wheat field, and I reached in, the combine hung up, and I got off the tractor and went back to the combine, and the doggone thing, I'd forgotten to take the tractor out of gear, and I was working down there in the combine, and all of a sudden it lurched forward, and doggone it, it took off my arm. Can you imagine that? And he said, "Oh yeah, what'd you do then?" He said, "Well, I just picked up that arm, went up to the house, got a bunch of thread, and I sewed that arm back on. Now, is that tough enough for you?" And the gunny said, "Well, I guess you can enlist in the Marine Corps. What do you think of that?" And the kid goes, "Right on, right on." We've been awfully serious here, and Vietnam was a serious operation. It was unfortunately, it had a lot of politics in it, a lot more than even we have today. It's very, very political in nature, and a lot of decisions were made that would have, if not made, if they'd let the military run the operation, it would probably have had an entirely different outcome. But unfortunately, they didn't. Today, as we look at those troops that are over in Afghanistan and Iraq in harm's way, I want each and every one of you, and you probably do, I probably don't have to remind you of this, but every time I go any place that I see a young man or a young woman in desert camis, I make a point of going up and thanking them, because they are holding their heads high. They know that they're doing some good. We know that we did some good in Vietnam also. We constructed churches. I can remember one of my commands. I had the good fortune of constructing a school for a bunch of the children. And there are so many things going on in Iraq in particular and Afghanistan that are contributing to those people. And those of you that get emails from out there, which I do every day, a lot of them, it's a whole different story than what you read in the media. So anytime, contrary to what we went through, anytime you see one of those young persons that are on their way in or out, make a point of going up and saying hello and thank you very much for your service. As we wish, in a lot of cases, there's a lot of folks in here I know that were treated pretty shabbily, but you held your head high, and that's in tribute to you. You're a group of tough people. You were able to say, I'm going, those of you that made more than one tour, or those of you that only made one tour, you said, I'm going to do the very best job I can for my service and for my country. And for you, my hat's off to each and every one of you. God bless each and every one of you, and thank you very much.
Our final speaker today will be Colonel James Stone, United States Army retired. He's a recipient of the Medal of Honor for action November 21st and 22nd, 1951 in Korea. He was a POW for 22 months, later was a senior advisor to the National Vietnamese NCO and Officer Academy in 1969. It's always a pleasure, Jim, to have you here and to honor you as you come and honor us.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be with you. I know today we have a lot of veterans there, and it's real good to see you. I kind of feel good to see all of you today. I want to mention a few things, though, before I get into this. We're here today to honor the men and women who served in Vietnam. So I'm going to open your eyes a minute. Good afternoon, Vietnam. All right. Now, is everybody awake? Oh. All right. Like everyone else, it's better to have your notes in front of you. A few times lost myself along the way, so I always like to look at them when I do have a speech to make. I didn't really want to make this speech today. I wanted a certain heavyweight to make it, Alan, but then I tried on another representative, and I got negative calls there. So whatever it is, you're going to have to put up with me for this short period of time. Ladies, I'm glad to see you here. You seem to add something that's real special. You bring your presence here means a special event for all of us. Now, one way to tell your boyfriend from your husband, or going to be husband, the difference from what will be is about 30 pounds. Now, there's another little story. As we all become veterans and move up and get married along the way, and the marriage pretty much endures for maybe a quarter of a century. And you start receiving questions. Well, how can it be successful? You're staying together. Generally, the woman will reply to you, long ago I forgave him for not being like Paul Newman. So that's our story and our relations to the men and the women who served so valiantly back here in the States. It's really rough in the middle of the night to see that man come or that officer come. You get that call in the middle of the night that your husband has been killed. That really cuts you, and really cuts you to pieces. Now, for those that want to get into details and how we got into the South Vietnam situation, there is one book, Vietnam Reference, from the Library of Congress. It will give detailed information, who said what and how we got into it. But I'd like to say to the men and women who served in South Vietnam, you served with honor, integrity, and of course you did your job. Now today, I'm going to mention one thing. Sometimes in a war situation, we see men killed. But still they get up and they keep going. And a good example of that right now is Alan Harper. I'd like to, well, you can't stand though, can you? Who is one of our senior officials here at VA. Well, I'd like for everyone to give him a hand. It's really encouraging to me to see a man that has received a setback, but still you get right up and you keep going. And that's a wonderful thing to see. Now I want to say something else too. You men and women serving out there today recognize the value of your American citizenship. Now, Ken, are you still here? Yeah, I thought you were. Ken Cordier. How long were you in a POW camp? Well, that's a long time. So I'm glad you still have your sanity. Some of them I come out with, some of them just simply didn't have it when they come out of there. Some of them might have said, well, maybe Stone, one of those that didn't have it when he came out. But they served under adverse conditions, extreme conditions. A lot of men died under adverse conditions. But still they pulled themselves up and they kept going again. For you, particularly the POWs, the men that served as POWs for long periods of time, how you kept your sanity is beyond me. Now, certain things happened out there that were really under extreme circumstances. I better not. I've seen men killed in a POW camp. Then the next night, we have to bury them. That'll be enough on that. But I'd like to say to men like Ken Cordier there today, and my fellow colleague, Mike, don't go to sleep on me. There's something about these men that make me feel good, that I'm proud to be associated and be with them at all times. They simply, you can't keep them down. And that's the American spirit, and that's what we live for, our American way of life. And you represent our American way of life. All right, I thank you for the short message here. I could go on and on, tell you combat stories, but you wouldn't want to hear those. All right, thank you.
You know, Jim is like many of us. He will not tell a war story, but he will relate a combat experience in great detail to you. And just so Jim wouldn't feel bad today, I really did this on purpose. Sure. Jim, I forgot to mention that Cynthia Hall is with us here today from Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison's office. And Cynthia, I wish you would stand, please, so we would honor you and thank you very much. And thank the senator for what she does for our armed forces also. I'd like to get into some presentations now, and I think some of these are going to be very special to you that you may not forget for a long time. There's a young lady here, Mrs. Thon Van Tran, is on the staff of the Dallas VA. She was not able to be here with us today, but wanted to send a message to us, especially at this time. The letter that she wrote will be read by Ms. Betty Boland Brown, the acting director here. Mrs. Brown's father, by the way, was a Navy veteran of the Iwo Jima campaign. I would like her now to read the letter from Mrs. Tran that I think you'll find exceptionally enlightening on this occasion. Mrs. Brown.
Dear Vietnam veterans, I'm deeply honored to be writing to you today, both as a VA employee and fellow American. My family and I were Vietnamese refugees, a group known as Boat People. My brother was 9 years old at the time. In a few years, he would be forced to go into the military. My parents knew they must do something before it was too late. Our family lived in Cameron. Because the bay provided access to the ocean, it was decided that our home would be on the harboring site before the escape. We fled in a small fishing boat and floated in the ocean for 7 days with little food or water before reaching the Philippines. 45 people left that certain night, and 44 made it to the island. Although my parents knew the trip was very dangerous, the fear of religious and personal persecution was far greater. We lived in a refugee camp in Manila for nearly a year. Although the conditions were deplorable, it was far better than any life anyone could have hoped for by continuing to exist under a communist regime. With nothing more than the clothes on our backs, we held on to our faith and hope. In 1980, our prayers were finally answered when the Catholic Diocese of Dallas sponsored our family to come to America. The early years living in this country were extremely difficult for our family. We endured a lot of hardship and challenges from cultural barriers. My youngest sister was born only 4 months after we came to America, and my parents struggled to care for 6 small children. As unskilled laborers, they worked very hard at their jobs that were available to them. Often discouraged, but never broken-hearted, my father worked as a maintenance worker at our church while my mother washed dishes at the daycare center and sewed at night. The outpouring of support from our church, the local community, and our sponsor family helped us tremendously in overcoming much adversity and transforming into our new life. Today, all my siblings and I have graduated from college, and these are from prominent schools, including Valor University, University of Texas at Dallas, University of North Texas, and Southern Methodist University. After earning my master's degree in healthcare administration and business administration, I accepted a position here at the Dallas VA as the administrative officer of nuclear medicine and radiation oncology. I knew this was a great opportunity for me to give back to those who had already given so much. While working here, I have befriended many veterans, both patients and employees, and there is not enough I can say about each and every one. I would like to share a little about my friend John Smiley, who was a Vietnam veteran. My brother-in-law first met Smiley in a chance encounter from the untimely death of another Vietnam veteran. Initially, Smiley was very uncomfortable about being friends with my family. He had not had much interaction with Vietnamese people since his days as a young combatant of the war, and seldom talked about the experience to anyone. After some time, though, he was able to embrace this different culture, and a special friendship developed between our families. Smiley and his family even attended my sister's wedding. One day, Smiley opened up his hand and showed me an old worn-out medallion. He had gotten it off a young North Vietnamese soldier he had killed in the war, a person who had been taught to recognize as the enemy. On one side, it had an etching of a young lady, the other side bearing her name. Was this his sweetheart, and were the two in love? Smiley had been carrying this medallion every day of his life since the day as a reminder of the horrors of war. I believe Smiley finally found his peace that day. Tragically, he was killed in a motorcycle accident 3 years ago. I was deeply saddened by his death, but the overwhelming number of veterans who attended his memorial overshadowed my grief. I realized then that Vietnam veterans are a group unlike any other, unique in spirit and true to one another until the end. Although he may have died alone in death, Smiley did not make the journey home by himself. I and countless other Vietnamese people have been enriched by the personal sacrifices made by many brave soldiers, such as the ones of you who are present today. Our paths may never cross, but you have been a part of my life since I was born. Your courageous efforts were not made in vain, and the freedom you fought for will live in future generations of America. From the bottom of my heart, I wish to say, thank you, Vietnam veterans. God bless you all. Ton Tron.
I want to say that Mrs. Brown directs a dedicated and fantastically hardworking staff here. Don't let any publication tell you she doesn't. Thank you for that. There will be a copy of the letter right down here on the desk to my right. If you would like to pick that up going out, you certainly can. It will be available. When I was a cadet at the United States Military Academy, the nation's oldest and leading military academy, by the way, I always know that every time there's an inauguration, because you see the order of march always has to start with the number one organization, which just happens to be the military academy. I don't know how it fell in that way. But anyhow, while I was a cadet at the military academy, I was a Sunday school teacher, and one day a pretty little girl came into my Sunday school class and told me very quickly that I'd better be nice to her because her daddy was the superintendent named William C. Westmoreland. And I was exceptionally nice to that young lady. As a matter of fact, when we'd have our parades, I guess because of my attachment to her, or her attachment to me as a Sunday school teacher, she would always run over and grab me by the leg there and tell her mommy and daddy that this was her cadet, which I was sitting there looking at General Westmoreland and his wife. I actually contacted General Westmoreland and asked him to be here today, and he would have been here, I will assure you of that, because Kitsy, his wife, would have made him be here. But because of his health conditions now, he's 91 this time, he was unable to attend. As a matter of fact, though, he did write a letter that he not only asked, he ordered me to read to you. I happened to serve under his command in Vietnam when he was commander there from 1964 to 1968. Here's the letter that General Westmoreland wrote to each and every one of you, and I will just tell you that it's written from the bottom of his heart. It says, on the occasion of the ending of the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War, signaled by the evacuation of Saigon on April 30th, 1975, it is my privilege to send my greetings and heartfelt best wishes to you men and women who served under my command and all the other veterans that have proudly served their country assembled here today at the Dallas VA Medical Center. We served together in a noble cause that attempted to preserve freedom for a country besieged by forces opposed to the values we have always held dear throughout our nation's history. You men and women served honorably, courageously, and unselfishly, and reflect that all that is made and kept this country great and free. We sacrificed together and returned to our native land with, in the words of Tacitus, our heads bloodied but unbowed. Many of our brave comrades did not return or are still missing in action, and we will always grieve and remember them. I will always be proud of you and remember till my dying breath what we did together. William C. Westmoreland, General Chief of Staff, United States Army retired. And I'd like to thank General Westmoreland. At this time, we have sort of a special treat now. I would like retired Army Colonel Andy Cottingham, medical doctor, to come forward and assist in this special presentation. Colonel Cottingham came today from San Antonio, where he lives, resides. He was in the Special Forces as a Ranger qualified Army medical officer in Vietnam and served in some of the major battles and conflicts there. Colonel Cottingham.
Thank you so much. On a very personal note, I want to say again and reiterate how beautiful I thought the National Anthem was sung today. I don't think I've ever heard it any better. And again, on a personal note, it is a great pleasure and a distinct honor to be here with you today and to participate in this ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow veterans, heroes,
and dignitaries. On the 17th of June, 1967, at Detachment A 244, U.S. Army Special Forces, Dak To, South Vietnam, camp came under a heavy mortar attack. The following is a very brief narrative, first-hand narrative of the events of that day. I would like to read them to you. In the early morning hours, I was awakened by a series of loud explosions. I got out of my bunk and heard another loud explosion. This time it was near my bunker. I heard someone screaming, "My feet, my feet." At the time, I thought whoever it was had dropped a 4.2 mortar plate on his feet. As I exited my bunker and was mounting the stairs, I saw a big flash. The next thing I knew, I had sandbags on my chest and pain in my right shoulder. I got the sandbags off me and started up the stairs again and met two men bringing a litter into my bunker. We got the litter into the bunker and placed the wounded man on my bunk. The injured officer had severe traumatic wounds to his lower limbs and was in a state of shock. I had no plasma nor morphine in my bunker, so I asked one of the litter barriers to stay with him while I ran to the dispensary to retrieve the needed supplies. I ran to the dispensary, grabbed some plasma and morphine, and started back to the bunker. As I left the dispensary, it took a direct hit from a rocket round. I was able to get back to my wounded man. I don't believe I was gone more than a few minutes, and I started 2 IVs and administered morphine. I applied 2 loose tourniquets in the hopes that perhaps his legs could be saved. The blood flow had stopped some, was not bleeding quite so heavily. At that time, he told me that he could not feel his legs. Well, I told him, don't worry, you have some shrapnel. Possibly the shrapnel is impinging on your nerves. In reality, I did not think that he would make it be medevac. In confidence, he told me that he wanted me to contact his father and his wife because the name on his uniform was not his real name. You see, he was in covert operations. He gave me his real name and his father and wife's name, and he told me to promise to contact them, and I assured him that I would write to them. During this time, KIAs were being brought into the bunker. As daylight started to come, I was summoned by the camp commander to attend to the wounded Montagnards and South Vietnamese. A day later, a medic showed up to treat my wounds, shrapnel in the right shoulder, and assist me. Special Forces medic who wrote this account is here with us today. He is visiting us from Florida. His name is Jimmy Hill. Jimmy did not receive a Purple Heart for the wounds that he received that day at Dak To. Jimmy, will you please step forward? lives of a fellow veteran, fellow comrade in arms, we present to you Jim Gill, Purple Heart.
Sort of kept this as a surprise to Jimmy until someone right before we started walked up and congratulated him on receiving this today. But I still think that doesn't diminish for not only what he did, but the pleasure and honor we have of doing that. You know, sometimes it takes a long thing for certain items to be brought to closure, but I think we brought this to closure today, and I certainly am honored to be part of someone receiving what they truly deserve. And there are probably many of you sitting out there today, or at least some of you today, that deserved a lot more than what you got. I just want you to know that myself, as well as many others, certainly recognize that. Before we get to our entertainment, as I was driving over here today, I just sort of was thinking back toward my Vietnam experiences and sort of thinking about something that just sort of reflected the feelings of the people who served and the members of our armed forces who served in Vietnam. And it came to my mind a little operation which I happened to be on up in the Central Highlands in 1966 called Operation Hawthorne, where a former football player, All-American named Bill Carpenter, the lonesome inn at West Point, had to call in the not only later on we even called in artillery, but he actually called in from the air white phosphorus bombs to be dropped on him in order because he was involved in an ambush situation by a very numerically superior force, and actually had to call in the napalm as well as the white phosphorus to get him out of it. I happened to be located about 5 clicks from him at the time down in the mountains, and it was night. And my commander said, well, I want you to take your men and fight your way through the enemy and join Bill to give him support. After I did this, I just realized that I had now fought my way where both of us were now surrounded, which didn't make me feel too good. I remember the next morning my first sergeant coming to me and said, sir, we received an intelligence report that tells us that the surrounding force is made up of 2 NVA regiments with a strength of approximately 3,000 men. We had about 250. He said, I don't think we ought to tell the men about this. And I'll never forget one of my RTOs looking at me and said, nope, we shouldn't do that, sir. Because you see, if we tell them that there's 250 of us and 3,000 of them, hell, we'll get so overconfident we may just charge down and take them on this afternoon. And you know something? He was right. Because those odds were far, far swayed in our favor at 12 to 1. Because I know the fighting power and strength of an American fighting man. And it just sort of reflected the attitude of both the Marines, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army that served together over there so much. I want to go to a little light side now and introduce to you, which I think is going to be a real treat. Our guest speaker is Bob Pierce today. Bob has appeared in nightclubs around the country, Chicago, New York, including Madison Square Garden and off-Broadway. He performed for senatorial offices, and we won't hold that against him. He specialized in impersonations, voiceovers, and accent. His brother happened to serve in one of the greatest fighting forces the world's ever known, the 101st Airborne Division in Vietnam, and I won't tell you what group I served in, but maybe similar. Bob is now an account executive serving the Army and Air Force Exchange Service. It's a privilege and a pleasure to introduce to you Bob Pierce for our entertainment today. Bob.
My, what a tough act to follow. A lot of serious faces out there, so I'm going to try to turn tables on you because my objective here today is to put a smile on your face and make you laugh and have you walk away happy while you're retrospecting 30 years since we left Vietnam. I was asked by Alan to think about coming in and doing a retro USO show, that there would be a lot of props and you could do Bob Hope and you could come on in and it'll really be a treat for everybody because they're going to remember the times that they might have seen Bob when he was over in Vietnam. And then he called me and told me about the budget cut. So you get me. You don't get Bob Hope. Bob Hope said that he didn't like to tell political jokes because he saw way too many of them get elected. He also said back 30 years ago that he wanted to be politically correct. Now, politically correct then meant making fun and making puns against the politicians. Today, we're very, very careful with everything we say and do. We don't want to offend anybody. And a lot of my material is accents. It's talking about the melting pot that makes up this wonderful country of ours. So I hope you'll all give me a little bit of leeway because I'm going to do accents and impressions from around the world for you. I've traveled to many, many countries and told these stories everywhere. So if Bob Hope were here, you'd probably, if you can close your eyes and think, you'd hear be a chopper coming in, and he would walk out, and there'd be two voluptuous ladies standing there, and he'd be telling you about why you were fighting for your country, and these were the reasons. And here are a couple of cheap shots from Bob. It's nice to be here in Camp Dallas. Why, I think you Vietnam veterans have really got it made. Look at this facility. Look at the respect they're giving you for all of the things that you've done for our country. I just came from the cafeteria, and they got all 8 of the C rations on the menu. I had beef and shrapnel myself for lunch today. In fact, I saw 2 of you in the hallway, one guy trading his pineapple for pound cake, etc., etc. Sign over a Vietnam pet shop. Buy 1 dog, get 1 flea. Why does it take 200 choices to award somebody a Miss America when we only get to choose 2 politicians to pick a president? Those are Bob. You know, his dinky dow jokes, and he taught us all to laugh at ourselves. At an event in Washington, I did a little quip on President Nixon. I was asked by Senator Vance Hartke and Senator Mansfield, please do your Nixon. So I'll give you a little bit of Nixon. The president was out on his yacht on the Potomac River. He had on his bib that said, I am the president. And he was out barbecuing in a little barbecue, and he picked up a steak, and the grease fell down on the manila deck, and he hit the water, out cold, and 2 little boys coming along in a rowboat. They see this head bob out of the water, and they fish out the president, and they bring him aboard, and he comes to, and he turns to one of them, and he says, I want to thank both of you young fellows for rescuing Chief Executive of the United States of America, and on behalf of all your fellow Americans, I want to give both of you a wish at my command. I'll make no mistake about it. You young fella, what can I do for you? He says, Mr. President, I'd like to be appointed to the Naval Academy. He says, all right, young fella, what about you? What can I do for you? He says, Mr. President, I'd like to be buried at the National Cemetery in Arlington. He says, how old are you, young fella? He says, I'm 12. He said, you're 12? And you're worried about where you're going to be buried? Yes, sir, because when I go home and tell him I saved your butt, he's going to kill me. When I was breaking into business 30 years ago, I was very fortunate. I had some good teachers. One of them was Jonathan Winters. And Johnny was probably the funniest man I've ever met in my life. And the other was a man named Myron Cohen. And Myron Cohen told me that no jokes had to end in a four-letter word. None of his material was blue. He was Jewish, and he had some very, very funny Jewish jokes. I'd like to tell one of them to you now. Levin comes home from the hospital. He's in bed the first night with his wife, Becky. He turns to Becky and he says, "So, Becky, so well?" Becky says, "So well what?" "Becky, I'm in the hospital 6 months. I'm home. I'm in my bedroom. It's time to do your wifely duty." She says, "Don't be silly. You're a sick boy. I don't want, you should have a relapse, and I'm entitled that I'm the cause. You wouldn't touch me." He says, "But the doctor gave me a clean bill." She said, "Then already you go to the doctor. You'll get a note from the doctor. You wouldn't touch me." Oi. He goes to the doctor, and he says, "Can you help me out?" And the doctor says, "All right, let's see. Write a letter. Dear Mrs. Levin, Saul Levin has been in my care for the last 6 months with a cardiac infraction, and he has made a beautiful recovery. He has the vigor and vitality of a 20-year-old man. He may engage in any affairs of the heart that he so desires. Signed, Dr. Goldman." How's that? He says, "That's fine, doctor, but I wonder you could do me a personal favor. You know the part there where you're saying, 'Dear Mrs. Levin,' could you just make a slight change and say, 'To whom it may concern'?" I once had the pleasure of meeting Walter Matthau. And Walter was really one of the funniest people I've ever met as well. He used to say, "Kids, give them the one-liners. The ones we used to hear back in vaudeville. That's where I started." He said, tell them this. I just came back from a pleasure trip. I took my mother-in-law to the airport. A bum comes into court. He's drunk. He goes before the judge. The judge says, "We brought you in here for drinking." The bum says, "Okay, judge, let's get started." Peter Sellers, all these giants, Carson, Benny, Burrell, Gleason, they were all able to make us laugh and laugh at ourselves. When Peter Sellers would walk out into a room, the Pink Panther, he'd walk up to someone who was there, boom in the room. I remember the one-liner from him that used to say, Monsieur, excuse me, does your dog bite?" "No, sir." The dog bit him in the leg and he said, "You told me your dog didn't bite." He said, "Monsieur, it's not my dog." Winston Churchill, there's another beaut. Winston Churchill was on a train in England. He was sipping his brandy, and there was a woman very well coiffed sitting across from him. And of course, he's rowdy and he's noisy, and she turns to him and she says, "Excuse me, sir. I beg your pardon, but you're totally out of line, and you're an incorrigible drunk." He said, "Madam, I may be an incorrigible drunk, but you're ugly." He said, "And madam, tomorrow morning, when I wake up, I shall be sober, but you will still be ugly." Then, of course, who is the ultimate hero? Who's the man that we all related to in the movies? Now, General Carey, you gave me permission. You told me it was okay. The Duke, John Wayne. In order to do John Wayne, you got to have the John Wayne walk. So I hope the people in the back can see it, but here's the John Wayne walk. hear laughter in the back, please? We're going to do some dialects for you now. Let's cut the lavalier off. A Vietnamese joke, straight from Vietnam. Mandarin calls his number one son into court. And he says, number one son, did you push the outer house in the Mekong River? Number one son say, oh, no, Honorable Father. I no do this terrible thing so. Honorable Father say, number one son, in America, George Washington, father, say, George, you always call him George. George, did you chop down the cherry tree? Number one son, George Washington say, Honorable Father, I must tell the truth. I did chop it down cherry tree. Right, so number one son must tell the truth. Number one son say, oh, okay, Honorable Father. Frankie George Washington, I also tell the truth. I did push the outhouse in the Mekong River. With this, the old man leans back. Wah! He gives him a karate chop, knocks him 10 feet on the floor, and the kid gets up and goes, Honorable Father, in America, George Washington, a father, no punch George Washington in the mouth for tell the truth. Honorable Father say, number one son in America, George Washington, father, was no sitting in the cherry tree. I cleared this one with the general as well. Guadalcanal, Japanese joke. Japanese major standing there, 5'4", a little peacat with a little red star on it. They bring a Marine in. His arms are behind him with a bamboo pole running through it. Throw him down in front of the Japanese major who pulls a samurai sword. Puts it in front of the Marine. He looks at the Marine and he says, Marine, you dog, you pig. You don't give me the information that I'm looking for. We're going to pluck out your fingernail. We're going to cut off your toes. And then we're really going to hurt you. I want to know the exact position of your troop. How many men, how many tanks? The Marine says, my name is Corporal Marvin Ginsburg, United States Marine Corps, serial number 4506375. Marine, this last chance I ask you this question. You don't tell me what I want to know. We're going to skin you alive, pluck out both your eyes, and then you're going to be in a heap of trouble. I want to know how many men in your disposition, how many are there tanks, and where are they? My name is Marvin Ginsburg, Corporal, United States Marine Corps, serial number 4506375. The Japanese major looks at him and says, you know something, Ginsburg. It's a lucky thing for you I'm a Jewish. How about some Italian? We got Italians in the room. Anybody of Italian descent? I'm sure there's a few out there. Italian immigrant goes before the judge and he says, Judge, you on? I go night to school, Judge. I study the preamble. I study the Constitution. I study Abraham Lincoln. He's across the Delaware. I study George Washington Gettysburg Address and the Bill of Rights. And just because I'm not speaking so good English, I hope you don't flunk me in my American citizen. You know what the judge told him? As long as I'm sitting on this bench, you don't got to worry about nothing. Italian lady walks into church in Rome. There's two workers up on the scaffolding. They're cleaning the frescoes off. And she's down there with the black babushka, and she's praying the beads. And Mario turns to Louis, and he says, Luigi, that's a Mrs. Farucci. Hey, she's praying again. Let's have some fun with her. What do you mean? Wait, watch this. We're going to have some fun with Mrs. Farucci.
Mrs. Farucci, this is Jesus.
Mrs. Halucci, this is Jesus. Mrs. Halucci, this is Jesus.
She says, shut up, you face. I'm talking to your mama. French. Three Frenchmen are sitting around, are discussing the word called savoir-faire. And the first one turns to the other one, he says, so Jean-Claude, what would you call, the typical word in French, savoir-faire? He says, well, let me give you a situation. Let's assume you are going to the airport, to the DFW, and you remember you forgot your tickets and they're home in your boudoir on the ship road. And you must retrieve them, so you return, you walk into the ship, into the boudoir, and you go to get the tickets, and sacrament, in bed with your wife, your best friend. And you look at the two of them and you say, Monsieur, pardon-moi. That would be savoir-faire. The second Frenchman said, no, certainement. No, that's not savoir-faire. Savoir-faire, some situation, you walk into the boudoir, your best friend in bed with your wife, you look at the two of them and you say, pardon-moi, please continue. That would be savoir-faire. The third Frenchman says that two of you should be ashamed to admit you're even French. That's not savoir-faire. Oh, savoir-faire. French savoir-faire would be the same situation. Into the boudoir, you look at the two of them and you say, pardon-moi, monsieur, please continue. And he continues. He's got the savoir-faire. How about Cajun? Same guy moves to New Orleans, all of a sudden he's a Cajun. There's two of them sitting at a bar, Roosevelt Road, next door to the hotel, one of the old Cajun bars, and one turns to the other one, he says, don't I know you? He says, I don't think so. He said, well, I know I saw you before. He said, where are you from? He said, I'm from West Lafayette, Louisiana. Well, I know that. He said, but I asked you, where are you from? Where'd you go to high school? Because I'm from West Lafayette as well. He said, I went to West Lafayette High. Wow, don't share. I don't believe that. That's like the same high school I went, I played football for them people. He said, well, so did I. He said, I don't believe that. We come from, what year did you graduate? He said, 1976. Hot dog, man, I don't believe that you can graduate 1976, the same high school. We went in the same neighborhood, the same town. I don't believe that. The phone rings. Bartender picks up the phone. Oh, yeah. Hello, boss. Yeah. No, I've been kind of quiet. No, nothing happening much. Who's there? He says, just the two Boudreaux twins. They had about 20 beers apiece, and they're so socked out, they don't even recognize each other. Polish. Guy goes into a store, walks up to the clerk, and he says, I'd like some Polish sausage. Man behind the counter says, are you Polish? He said, why do you ask me that? I walked in here and I said I wanted some German sausage. You're going to ask me if I'm German? Well, I said I wanted a taco. You're going to ask me, are you a Mexican? I don't know why that. What's the big deal? Why in the world do you have to know whether I'm Polish? He said, well, I just wondered because this is a hardware store. Thank you for laughing. Here's my favorite Polish story. By the way, I've told this in every accent, in every country I've ever been in the world, and it works no matter what the accent. Two Polish guys, Stash and Stash. They're talking to each other. One says, Stash, you don't believe this night. I am making the passionate love with this woman in the bedroom. Home come the big son of my gun, the husband, 6'12" and a half. He come in the bedroom. I'm scared. I'm gonna run. I don't know what to do. He said, what'd you do? He said, wait, I gotta tell you. So I'm running. I look under the bed, full of clothes. I got nowhere to go. I go into the bathroom, the shower curtain, full of the clothes. I got nowhere to go. I'm looking everywhere. So what did you do? He said, wait, I tell you, I'll run. I running. I jump out the windowsill. I'm hanging on the windowsill with my fingers. I'm hanging there. Over come the big son of a gun, the husband, 6'12" and a half. He take the windowsill. Down on my fingers, black and blue bloody. I'm hanging there, and I'm really mad. Bleeding. He take the big boots. Down on my fingers, black and blue bloody. I'm hanging there. I'm telling you. You know what makes me the most mad of all? I look down, I'm only 2 inches off the ground. Greek guy standing on a street corner waiting for a bus. Along comes an American. He says, "Excuse me, buddy boy. Can you tell me in the English, what is this what called polar bear?" American says, "Well, that's a big white animal. It sits in the snow and eats fish all day." The Greek guy says, "I shan't gonna do it." He says, "What do you mean you're not gonna do it?" He says, "Them guy wants me to be a polar bear in a funeral. I'm not gonna do it." Now we get our jokes by email. I'd like to read you some news flashes from around the world. France. A news bulletin. France announced today that it plans to ban fireworks at the Euro display following last night's display that caused soldiers at a nearby French army garrison to surrender. Poland. Flash. Krakow, Poland. Plane crash. Poland's worst air disaster occurred early today when a 2-seat Cessna veered off course and crashed into a cemetery in central Poland. Police search and rescue workers have recovered 868 bodies so far, and they expect that number to climb higher as digging continues into the night. India. For centuries, Hindu women have worn a red spot on their forehead. We have naively thought it had something to do with their religion. The true story has just been revealed by the Indian Embassy in Washington. When one of these women gets married on her wedding night, the husband scratches off the red spot to see if he has won a convenience store, a gas station, or a motel in Florida. Canada. For the Navy. The U.S., this is really a conversation that took place by the Canadians with the USS Abraham Lincoln, authorities on the coast of Newfoundland, in October 1995. It's now public record. The radio conversation was released by the CNO and authorized by the Freedom of Information Act. Canadians, please divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid a collision. Americans, recommend you divert your course 15 degrees to the north to avoid a collision. Canadians, negative. You will have to divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid a collision. Americans, this is the captain of a U.S. Navy ship. I say again, divert your course. Canadians, no, I say again, divert your course. Americans, this is the aircraft carrier USS Lincoln, the second largest ship in the United States Atlantic Fleet. We are accompanied by 3 destroyers, 3 cruisers, and numerous support vessels. I demand that you change your course 15 degrees north. I say again, that's 15 degrees north. Or countermeasures will be undertaken to ensure the safety of this ship. Canadians, fine. This is a lighthouse. It's your call. Little girl's digging a hole in the backyard. I'm on time call. We got to go fast. Little girl digging a hole in the backyard. She's got a mound of dirt about this high. The next door neighbor looks over the back of the fence and he says, "Dorothy, what are you digging that hole for?" She says, "It's for my goldfish. It died." He says, "Isn't that an awfully big hole for a tiny little goldfish?" She said, "No, it was inside your darn cat." Anyway, I hope I've made you laugh. Put a smile on your face. It's a privilege and an honor to have been asked to come and stand before you folks, the real heroes. And I think it is 30 years of reflection that we've all gone through today, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much.
Which I've been familiar with. Actually, what this is, when one of the people that I used to work with very closely, who is now serving with our armed forces in Iraq, found out I was going to be doing this, he sent me this little T-shirt from Iraq, and of course it says United States Army on front, but he's got a real good message on the back. which I thought was very appropriate. It says, "Our feet into the Middle East." So that's what's going on over there. So I promise. I would like at this time, as we conclude our ceremony, to have Linda Clark come forward with some very appropriate remarks that she would like to make. Linda?
I'm Linda Clark, wife of Alan Clark, the Public Affairs Officer here at the Dallas VA. Alan was also that officer who was wounded that day in June 17, 1967 at Docto. He lost his leg and lost the other leg 10 days later at Brooke General Hospital. And his best friend there at Brooke was Abe Stice. Abe, would you come up, please? Abe was a helicopter pilot with the 1st Cavalry Division. His best friend in Vietnam was Dr. Andy Cottingham, whom you've already met. Andy, would you come up? And Jimmy Hill, would you please come back up? Alan and I were in Washington, D.C. in November, and we visited the Vietnam Memorial. As we walked along and Alan found names of his classmates and friends, I was secretly thanking God that his name was not on it. And today, Jimmy, I want to thank you for your part in that. Alan did live, and he's had a rich, full life, and he fathered 2 beautiful daughters. One of them is here with us today, Christy Clark Brig. Christy, would you come up? The other daughter, Elizabeth, was not able to be here because of business commitments. Alan, what can I say? Colonel Stone, you said it. He gets up and goes and goes and goes. He walks on 2 artificial legs. He does remarkably well. I can't keep up with him. 5 weeks ago, he slipped here on some water at the hospital and fractured his hip, and he's in a wheelchair for a time. Alan, would you come up? Alan and I have only been married for 7 months now. But I have known him for about 30 years. It was 30 years ago at a social function that my husband, Jack Frost, who is now deceased, pointed Alan out to me on the dance floor. He had recently returned from Vietnam and had gotten his first artificial legs, and he was dancing with his beautiful wife, Jackie, who is the mother of these 2 beautiful daughters. I was astounded at his courage, and the smile and confidence warmed me through some times of my own struggles. And little did I know I would ever be married to Alan, but here we are. You know, there's a silver lining in every cloud, and I think Alan has found his. Before he was wounded, he was 5'9", but he always wanted to be 6'2", like his dad had been. And his first artificial legs, the doctors thought he should be 5'8", which he was. But over the years, he has inched up to be 6'2". And in his words, he grows in every job. We're all familiar with the book and subsequent HBO miniseries, Band of Brothers, about the Easy Company of the 101st Airborne Division. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to present to you a band of brothers from Vietnam. There's a passage in the Old Testament reminding the women to be thankful to King Saul and King David and all the mighty men of valor for the peace and prosperity that they enjoy. And today, on behalf of all the women who have my heart, I would like to thank all of these mighty men and women of valor for the peace and prosperity we enjoy. And as General Westmoreland reminded us, in the words of Tacitus, I'd like to paraphrase in saying, your heads may have been bloodied, but never let them be unbowed. Thank you, and thank you for coming.